Really glad you could get here. It's really good to see you. We had a great time the other night over at Paula's and so forth, and I'm looking forward to having you elucidate this very interesting life you've led that continues and seems to be getting more interesting all the time. And welcome very much to Conversation. A pleasure to welcome to the program Mac Truong. He's a lawyer. He's also an attorney. He's also an author. He's a philosopher. And he's also a television producer. He's had a very interesting, well-led life involving himself with a great deal of academic interest and also many degrees at the higher level of education. He's involved with international law, with a great number of the political players in a very interesting way that have been responsible for the operation of our governmental system internationally. He understands the law very well. He's also very philosophically inclined, and he's also a television producer, and he's a very interesting fellow. And Mac Truong, DMT, welcome very much to Conversation.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be with you, and I wonder if you could bear with me. I'd appreciate it very much. If you could sort of, because we got 58 minutes, if you could share your own background, where you were born and raised in your education, and then we'll get into a number of the hats that you wear and the things that you've explored intellectually and otherwise. But could you share your own background, please?
Okay. If you want to know more about the origin of my hardware, because I call my body hardware, that is one thing, which is different from who I am in real. So, if you want just to go by the earthly level of regular people...
Well, let's start there.
Right.
Okay.
I was born Vietnamese in 1944
Boy.
From the North Vietnam. That is where I was born. And by the time I was 1, I still remember, I was told that the Japanese occupy North Vietnam and they use the grains, the rice, and other products, foods of the people to run their trains. And they let about 1 million Vietnamese die of hunger.
Really?
Yes.
The Japanese?
Yes. And that's how that's how the Vietnamese do not like the Japanese. They don't like the Chinese either, because the Chinese occupy Vietnam for 1,000 years.
That's a long time. That's like Rome.
Continuously.
Yeah.
And the French, 100 years. And then later on, when the American came in, that's the latest vague of the enemy. However, if you want to classify who we hate the most, and you know who?
No, who? I don't.
I think the Chinese and the Japanese.
Chinese and the Japanese, the closest neighbors, right?
The American are right.
The Japanese more than the Chinese, or the Chinese more than the Japanese? And you've got a long history, did I hear you say 1,000-year history of the Vietnamese nation, or the sense of nationhood of the Vietnamese people?
I think it's difficult to compare, but the best way to compare how they would present it is, in total, the Chinese may be more, because we had 1,000 years occupation, and why the Japanese only a few years. So, but for those few years, they are no good.
But what I was referring to was the we then, 1,000 years of, that speaks the fact that there was a Vietnamese nation, or nascent, what was to become a nation, sense of identity among the people of the area called Vietnam these days. But 1,000 years, it goes way back culturally, the existence of people that would associate with the nationality now in the modern experience, Vietnamese.
Then I had to give you some kind of historical background of Vietnam.
Yeah.
We existed for 4,000 years.
4,000?
Yes. However, as the Vietnamese people, we concentrate first on North Vietnam, not even Central Vietnam or South Vietnam. So by about only 600 years ago, that we took over the Central Vietnam, and then also the South Vietnam. At one point, we had also Laos and Cambodia. That's why when the French occupy, they call it Indochina.
Right, they called that Indochina. They were there until
that includes Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia.
It did, and that was until about, what, 54, in Dien Bien Phu or something like that, that they left, and we picked that up for good or ill, the United States, but a lot of people think that was a terrible mistake on our part. And it seems to me we confused that the nationalism of the Vietnamese people with international communism somehow, because of its connection to to George Kennan's notions of containment and Chinese expansion outward from a so-called communist base from China.
I believe
terrible mistake, I think.
It was a mistake, but it's due to the fact that the America needed the France at that time.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Vietnam was the colony of the French, as we all know.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, the American had the choice between helping Ho Chi Minh or helping the French.
Okay.
And they chose to help the French because the French had to make concession in Europe to America.
I see, yeah.
And that's why
they had
say,
to make
okay,
concessions in Europe to America over what? I mean,
I think over
not Algeria or something. There was terrible.
Over a certain number of support by the French for certain American plans, so that in a way, like I say, that is your old colony, you can take care of that, or the French rather, with the goal saying, yes, we want to take care of that, let us alone. Vietnam is like part of our onions,
and
our
we had
business.
And we also had a treaty with the French.
Right.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, in that sense, the American supported the French, and they were against Ho Chi Minh.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Ho Chi Minh himself always liked Americans.
Yeah.
He could have been with America right from the beginning.
But that thing was a national...
And he didn't want the Chinese.
He didn't want China. They were people who were oppressed over along here.
Right.
And it was really national.
Right.
It wasn't some communist thing.
At the end, the French fought with the Viet Minh, and therefore the Viet Minh had to rely on the Russian and on the Chinese to help them for the arms.
So we had that Vietnam thing. It roiled the world so much. And we want to get back to your personal education and so forth, that kind of thing. But we had that event. Mr. McNamara finally said, we made a mistake. But in the course of that conflict that occurred, and it just roiled the United States terribly, as you know, or the world, I've seen figures as many as 3 to 4 million people perished in the violence that occurred during that incursion and so forth. Have you got any sense of that as a Vietnamese person, of the damage and the destruction that occurred to the Vietnamese or the people of that Indochina area as a result of, and to what degree was the United States was responsible for that, and was the only war that the United States ever lost? What is your reflection on that? And then we'll get on to your own personal life.
My reflection on that is actually America did not lose the war.
Okay.
America supported the losing side in Vietnamese conflict.
Okay.
Because Vietnam had been divided into North and South, the North under Ho Chi Minh, and they have the communist rules for that area of the country. And South, as you know, was following the lead of Diem, who was relatively a modern leader, and following the American or the Western system of liberal democracy. Up to a certain point, it's all right. So the country was divided like the rest of the world. The world was at that time between the communist bloc and with the free world bloc, as you know.
Well,
in Vietnam, they have two pieces, and we are fighting with each other.
Yeah.
We do not belong entirely to one bloc or the other. So now, it is the South Vietnamese who wanted the help of the Americans, rather than the American is really doing it.
Look into the history of look into the history of Korea, the Korean War, and the incursion of the UN.
Yes.
Yeah. And containment, Mr. Kennan's containment.
The Americans are good guys, and there has never been any country in the whole world that becomes strong and that is nice like America. We do go out. I say we now because I'm an American.
Yes, you're an American citizen now. Okay, good, yeah.
And
you've been here,
and I advise people every day, 1,000 people about American law.
Yeah, okay,
and I am something like 100% American up to a certain point.
Okay.
Because I know a lot more about American legal and political system than the average people.
I know that. And so let's get off that a minute and go back to your...
So, yes.
You were born what year again, I'm sorry?
1944.
44, okay. And you were there, and so and the 54 was Dien Bien Phu and so forth. Your education was in Vietnam, and did you not then take higher education in France? And could you talk a little bit about that
Now,
if you could?
If you want to talk about my education, it would cover the whole hours.
I know that. That's always a problem.
Here, let me amuse you a little by reading you, let's say, who I am is presented in a complaint against the American Bible Society. We'll talk about that later.
If
and I put
brief,
right there.
Okay.
I put right there is a party of the lawsuit about the plaintiff. That means me.
Yeah.
Plaintiff is also. First, between 1982 and December 2003, plaintiff practiced law in the city of New York, state of New York. During that time, he successfully completed more than 15,000 legal actions in various state and federal courts and the United States Department of Justice. In 1993, he was found to be model of success by the American Dream by a dozen of U.S. senators, 4 of whom, including the late Senator Moynihan, found him suited to be a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Including Mr. Biden as well in
That's
that 12.
That is correct.
Yeah.
We are 12 of them.
You were in touch with some pretty powerful people within the political system.
Yes. Now, here's what. Plaintiff is also a polyglot, patented inventor, psychologist, political scientist, philosopher, author of books in 3 languages, TV producer. Is also, most of all, creative founder and leader of a new world religion, capable of ending all violent theological differences or armed conflicts among existing major world religions, building from scratch an ultra-modern city called World Cap or World Capital, serving as the political and cultural capital of the world, and raising human consciousness to the next level of civilization in a long-lasting peace, harmony, and prosperity for all humankind, based on plaintiff's original method of thought.
On Plato. Plato?
No.
No, on what?
Based on plaintiff's original method of thought processing called absolute relativity, and a world constitution written and published by him in 1978 to establish the Universal Republic of World empowered by federal democratic and liberal world government, entitled The World Unfolding Structure of Civilization in a New Era, to be known as absolute relativity era, practicing reliability, productivity, respectability in absolute relativity. That means with balance, common sense, and reason. And if plaintiff is successful in carrying out only about 1% of his set vision and project for the world, he would have been known and or acknowledged as the greatest mind ever in human history, and as God of all gods, or DMT God 3.0.
Was that document written by you?
Yes.
Was that your own description of yourself? You were the plaintiff. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And here's the next part.
All right.
That you would have never seen anywhere in the whole history of the world.
Okay.
The next paragraph that say, to the best of plaintiff's knowledge and belief, plaintiff is DMT God 3.0 in comparison to Jehovah or Yahweh is God 1.0 or God the Father is based on the Torah or Old Testament, and in comparison to Jesus is God 2.0 or God the Son is based on the New Testament. Plaintiff has sufficient facts and rational reasoning.
Plaintiff has the what?
Sufficient facts.
Sufficient facts. Okay, yeah.
And rational reasoning, convincing that his instant belief is true, scientific and factual. No one with a reasonable and scientific mind can logically challenge such evidence.
Okay.
Here's the beauty of that.
That's written by you, about
Yes.
you, in a court document.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now they can put me right in jail if it's not true. For perjury, right there.
Well, I'm not sure where that stands legally, but you did do legal education in France.
I'm telling you. You'll be thrown out in court if you're lying.
Well,
that's the basic stuff you can know.
Yeah, my daddy was a lawyer, I wasn't, but I don't understand all the workings of the court. It seems Byzantine to me, and very confused sometimes.
You can argue with different way to present facts, but you cannot lie.
You were educated in France, by and large, is that correct, at the university level?
I finished high school in Vietnam.
In Vietnam,
that,
okay.
All the college.
What year would that have been, if I could, please?
Oh, it's about
You're coming right
63.
Up You're coming right up to the
63,
beginning of the
yes.
incursion of the United States government and
That's-
military there.
I went away, believe it or not, 1 week before Ziem was killed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Had I stayed over 1 week, I would have stayed in Vietnam.
Would you have fought in that war?
No.
You would not have fought. Would you have been on the side of the American
No,
forces?
I would have to, had I stayed there.
You would
yes.
have had to have.
Oh,
And you
no
would have
problem.
been on the side of the American forces?
Oh, yeah, because I come from South Vietnam.
You're from South Vietnam, and you would have
Yes,
been.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so that's something to keep in mind, that there was that. And there was a conflict with the North and Ho Chi Minh and all that. But you got out and avoided that because you went off to do training or education in France.
Right. That
And you
is
had learned
correct,
French as a
yes.
matter of course because you know that, and of course you speak English now.
To
But you-
come back to,
Yeah.
to serve the country after I got all the knowledge from the outside. From
And
the
you
country.
you do not have. Do you think the people of Vietnam? Again, those figures. I don't know if you have figures. I've seen, and not Cambodia. I'm not talking that or Pol Pot or anything. But 3 to 4 million people perished in the course of the fighting going on. Then, do the people of Vietnam feel any? And there was fierce fighting and resistant fighting against the United States. The United States had to leave in disgrace. They had people hanging on helicopters coming out of Saigon at the very end. It is touted as a war that was lost by the United States, the only one they ever really lost. What is the feeling of the people who suffered under that work of the United States government and our force doing that incursion on Southeast Asia that resulted in that? And no one has ever gone in the dock for war crimes that were committed. I know there was napalm dropped on children and that sort of thing by our forces. What is that? And yet you say you think the United States is a benevolent power. I wonder if you could address some of that before we get to your education in France.
I would say the Americans should not have to feel bad about it. It's the war, ideological side. America had the right to be on the side of the anti-communist forces, which was at that time, but it was the losing side. That's all I had to say. And that was the right of the United States to intervene up to a certain point, and after that the war became unpopular because actually it's the war between Vietnamese.
Go on, yeah.
And therefore the United States would have to withdraw, the same way as it might have been the war in Iraq right now.
In where? In
Iraq.
In Iraq.
Right now.
All
Assuming you say that that's the war between the Iraqis.
Well, you could
That's
say
it.
it's
We
between
can
the
out-
Shia and the Sunni, or it's between
And
us
now you say-
and we have the right to go there, and we can preemptively go and expend our power. And you seem to
No, I
praise-
did not say that.
You
I
said
say
you're
that-
a proud citizen of the United States of America and so forth.
Yes.
Okay.
I say you can go there like you can withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
That depends also on the interest of the United States.
Okay.
of
Yeah, and who
America.
determines the interest?
Because up to a certain point, you may have to be the police of the world to stop bigger danger that would come to it. So it was correct, for example, for John Kennedy to stop the Russian from install all the nuclear missile right in Cuba next to America by that time. With only a few hours, it can destroy New York, thing like that.
That was one of the most frightening moments in my life, that Cuban
That
missile
was
confrontation.
correct, but then
That was really, really hairy, as we used to say.
that is absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
It was the brink of the real nuclear war at that time.
That's right.
However, you may not have that much choice when you get against the bully. So
When
right
you
now,
get against the bully.
yeah,
Who's the bully?
in that
In
case,
case you thought there was Russia.
yes,
We
the
had
communists.
we had missiles in Turkey. That's okay.
That practice
You
right
think the
too.
United States is a good force in the universe, that they're on the side of justice in a good way, and we can, you don't seem to call them to task for things that they did that are wrong. Or I wonder how you see that.
If
It's
you
just-
if you want me to defend the policy of the United States, I can do that. Yes.
You would. You'd be able
Most
to do
of the
that as a
time,
lawyer. You have
yes.
to argue for your client.
Yes,
But that
yes.
doesn't mean what you really feel. Or
no,
what do you feel?
I really feel that
You
So-
believe in the United States of America, and you have faith in the United States of America as a force for good in the world.
So it's very good that your question. It's come right back to my philosophy is God 3.0, and that's why I'm trying to teach people.
Okay.
Had to rely on RP and AR.
You have to rely on what?
R, PR in AR.
I don't know what that means.
That means in this world, now I had to go right back because you asked a very difficult question, and really to express myself clearly, I had
Fair.
to give you the background.
Fair enough. And now
Okay? And that would answer everything else most easily.
Okay, just one last thing then.
Okay.
We don't want to talk about the legal education and that sort of thing, or your education, normal education. You want to talk about your philosophy now. Did that develop when you were very young, or did it develop after you'd gone to university and that sort of thing that you're now describing, your philosophy? I was trying to get a chronological fix on it.
My philosophy, you want the contents of it, you want the historical, let's say, background.
Well, I would have gone quickly over the fact that you studied law in France, and you studied under the Napoleonic Code and that sort of thing. You've got a great education. You've had a great contact with a great number of political leaders, Mr. Biden, Mr. Moynihan, and that sort of thing, apart from your philosophy. I don't know if your philosophy was part of your contact with them and that sort of thing. Trying to get a chronology of development of your consciousness.
Definitely not. My education is at least 4 times more extended than a regular student.
Okay.
Because I have full background as a lawyer.
Yes.
Up to the top level. That means as you had the difficulty to identify the degree, that's called juridical science doctorate.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. And J.D.
Which is higher, much higher level than J.D.
That was done in France?
J.D. means Jewish doctor.
Yes, I know that.
That is the degree for which you can become a lawyer.
Yes.
And you can take the bar after you got the J.D. and that's done.
Yeah.
But J.S.D. you have also to continue college after J.D. You have to get first also a master degree in law.
I see,
LLM. After that you have to do thesis and you have to prepare to get Ph.D.
Yeah, you got your
law.
Ph.D. as well. Yeah, that's really good.
The best way to compare is like a Ph.D. in law.
Okay, that's very good. And that was and you did your original university in law studies in France.
And I had to write a thesis that's called Ethics of International Law.
That's right, and you know international law. You have a feeling for that. That's very important and increasingly important in the world,
I'm
I think.
expert in international law because my Ph.D. is in international law.
Very good. Well, then you'd be able to put the war and peace and the items of the world structure of the world, the legal system and so forth, in understanding and international relations.
You can read my book.
Very important.
The Unfolding Structure of Civilization. And that I write the whole constitution for the world.
Is that the one where you came up with 4,000 pages or something? Or is that another book?
The 4,000 is the development of absolute relativity.
Okay, that's the theory. That's the
main thing.
Philosophy,
main thing.
Yeah. That's main to you. It all kind of accommodates and that sort of thing.
That's how it's very interesting that I can boil down the 4,000 pages in a few words so that we can use it as the basis to explain the rest.
Okay, you had that.
When you're reading.
Then what I do, we'll get ready in a couple of minutes here. I just want to go back, and you did mention it very quickly in that plaintiff. And remember, that was written by you about yourself, which is interesting. But in any event, that you had this communication with 12 of the leading senators within the United States political system, including Mr. Moynihan, Mr. Biden, and a number of the senators. And you were, by their letters and recommendations, if I want to make sure I understand
they are right.
They were in support of you, who is now a citizen.
Sitting at the
no,
US
wait a minute.
Supreme
Let
Court,
me make the point that for you to be considered as selection of a justice of the United States Supreme Court. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. Yes.
That's an incredible honorific thing to have with you, with those people writing letters in support of your being considered for that position, and that indicates that you were in touch with some of the very most powerful leadership elements of the American society. It's worth noting. Is that correct?
Yes, but
okay.
But the honor is great. However, incredible it's not. If you really read what I wrote to them, you would be moving and you may be crying with them. That's why after reading what I showed them as my resume at that time in 1993.
Right.
If you want to read this again for people, then you would see why I have more than 12 senators that support me to sit at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing for them.
Because the way I answer all the questions.
Including Mr. Biden, our current Vice President.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's right in here, but I think it's too long to read.
Yeah, well, that's the trouble. Reading is long and everything. You've written a great number of books, and you've published a great deal of work and so forth, and you've got this grounding in the world of politics and reality, of that sense, at that level, and philosophy.
You want to know how much I write, and people can only read what I write, and they could never do it. You know how? I done now up to now about 20,000 lawsuits.
I heard you say that in the plaintiff.
Assuming each lawsuit, I had to write like 20 pages in average.
Mm-hmm.
So how many pages I would have
That's
wrote
many.
just
You
for
do
that?
speed writing or
That
something.
make 200,000.
You must do that with
pages.
algorithms of a computer system that can
That's
run them
correct.
out and so
That's
forth.
word processing.
And if you do get the template, you can use the template for a number of those and so on. That's a lot of different pleadings at all levels of the court system, up to federal and local and state level you've been working in. And are the cases you work in, they're not all at the level of international law?
Definitely not.
No.
I must be one of the first lawyers who used word processing. That's how I can do it.
Okay, yeah. So
Since 1983.
You adapted quickly to the computer and could see that. You're technologically adept?
Because,
in terms of
actually, I am programmer for
you
IBM.
You are a programmer as
when
well.
I come in here. I have a lot of degrees.
You are, yes, I can
go
see
by
that.
my invention.
Those are some of the degrees. You have many. You've been academically involved in that sort of thing, and you've been in support of that. And then you've also, and that's what we were getting to with your philosophy, you're also a philosopher. And did the philosophy inform the opinion of people like Mr. Biden and Mr. Moynihan as to the ability for you to be considered an associate on the Supreme Court of the United States, or are they separate realms? Do you have separate hats that you wear when you're dealing with philosophical issues as opposed to, let's just say, for want of a better term, the realism of politics and the real world?
H2C. It is an excellent question. Of course it's connected, because I point right out what is the most fundamental principle of all the American legal system.
Okay, what is that principle?
Absolute volatility.
Absolute volatility. Okay, that means...
that means this. Everything is relative.
Okay, yeah.
And then you can go either way. And that's how you go to the court. There are two sides. They are fighting. And there's always, like they say, this one is cliche. There's two sides to the story.
It's not just a dialectic interpretation of things?
Up to a certain point you can say that, but it's more sophisticated and still logical than that. So mainly I can make it very easy. You can go like, there's no absolute truth. There are only, let's say, different way to see the same thing. For example, if you say that one person is guilty, he may be guilty up to a certain point. And you can show that he's not guilty from many different arguments.
Yeah.
So right now, because of this whole realm of reality that doesn't contain any truth in an absolute way, that's how I make up the rule of RP and AR to guide people.
Help me out again. The APR.
RPR, the first R meanings, that's a rule of conduct of how to guide yourself.
Okay.
So imagine like in this world of absolute relativity, you see
absolute
nothing.
volatility.
Relativity.
Relativity. I'm sorry, I got confused.
So it means that you go like in the dark. You don't see anywhere, no end, no direction. So it's very difficult to guide yourself. So that's how I make up rules for the person to guide themselves.
Okay.
The same thing, it would go back to all the philosophy with God 1.0, God 2.0, and just see different. But I can go directly with this one. The first R means reliability. The P means productivity. The second R means respectability. And then in absolute relativity. So let me, just bear with me.
Absolute relativity.
Right.
Okay.
So let me explain it to you why we need those rules.
Could I ask one thing? You talked about God 1, 2, 1, 2. That one was the Old Testament, New Testament, Christian tradition. What about in the Taoist or the Vedic and some of the other religious or spiritual understandings of the structure of consciousness and universe? Do you consider those?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you deal with those?
For example, Taoism or Buddha, I grade it like 1.0 or 1.5.
Okay, so you have a way of relating the West and the East that way then, right? Okay. Kipling said the East and West will never meet.
Would be 2.1.
Who would? Who would
Muslim,
be two?
The Muslim.
Muslim would be 2.1. Well, that's back into a monotheistic kind of Western tradition.
That is correct. But they are after the program of Jesus. But if you go that way, nobody will answer what we are talking about.
No, I think so. I think
You
it
do?
makes sense. Yeah, no, I can understand it in a way. You're talking about the structure of universe in a certain sense, and you're talking about the historical development of that. And it sounds to me like absolute relativity sounds to me a little bit like there's a term that Bucky Fuller, I don't know if you knew of or related to Bucky Fuller, used to relate to things in what he called synergy, and synergy is the behavior of systems unpredicted by the sum of its parts. There's something more than the resonating relationship between systems within a system. And so you're talking about systems within a system, it seems to me, is what you're saying. But synergy would be also, we do not know what will come when there is a synergistic resonancy at a higher level through an evolutionary process. That's what I'm thinking. The universe has a priori mystery, but it has synergistic levels of increased consciousness in its evolution. No?
That is another aspect of, let's say, universe or of reality you want to talk about. Right now I'm talking about, let's say, the law and the human behavior.
You say absolute, so you have absolutist things, and there are people who think they know exactly everything the way the universe is structured. It's absolute truth, absolute things. And then you have relativity, where there's a great deal of conjecture about what is the reality and the changing. And then there's synergy, which is the behavior of systems unpredicted by the sum of the dialectic interpretation of those two things. It's a synergistic universe in which we live at higher nested levels of understanding of the evolution of consciousness in the universe. Apex, perhaps, I would think, by humanity.
That's exactly. So you want to make your point, or you want to ask me a question?
No, I wanted to make that point in order to try and resonate with your idea of absolute relativity.
Then I would say this: absolute relativity is a principle.
It sounds like volatility when you say
relativity.
Okay, it would be different if it was volatility, yeah.
It's relativity.
Yes,
that is contradiction in term.
Yeah, right.
It's contradiction.
Seeming, yeah.
Not seeming, it is.
Okay, only if you have an absolutist sense of the meaning of words. But go ahead, I don't mean to... Okay.
I mean by making a contradiction.
Yeah, okay.
What is relative is not absolute. What is absolute is not relative.
Right, that's a dialectic.
Then I find out that the basic principle of the whole thing is absolute relativity. Even Einstein could not reach that far. He get to spatial relativity, and then he get to general relativity.
Yeah, that's
but he stopped
couldn't get to
general.
Couldn't get to unified field.
Right. He cannot get to absolute.
Right.
That means everything is relative.
Right. Or in quantum mechanics.
Right.
Even, yeah.
Because it's a contradiction in term.
That's right. Well, that's what I'm suggesting.
That's the
the
point.
universe
That's
is
the point.
synergetic.
Right.
That's what I'm suggesting.
So that's the main point.
And synergy is the behavior of systems unpredicted by the sum of its parts.
So you are mixing up two different things right now.
Well, it brings in temporal. It brings in time or evolution
That's
of
how
process.
I had to explain to you.
Okay.
People get confused, and nobody would be expert in this field except me.
Okay.
And most of the time, you want to use absolute relativity as a logical principle to understand how the matter behave themselves. That's one thing. So you mix it up already in your field. Me, for example, at this level, I'm more expert in using absolute relativity to understand how the human mind works, how you perceive reality,
well, the human mind
how you make up your own judgment to live in life.
Well,
so that's another field where you can apply the same principle.
Well, humanity, human consciousness is part of the broader evolution of consciousness in the universe. We're part of a larger system. And we can't just limit it to human consciousness. We're part of a larger system in the universe, no?
So
we grow out of a big bang and stardust.
My point is different from yours.
Well, perhaps, but I don't think so. I don't think so in the end. I don't think.
That's the point.
Yeah.
We always have point in commons, a lot.
Yeah.
And we have always the right to find out the differences between. So the main point in absolute relativity is to identify the identity where it's meaningful and to distinguish or to make the difference when it's meaningful. Otherwise, the identity is always there and the differences are always there.
Gotcha. I understand very well. I think the ideas of thermodynamics are very important.
So for now, let's come back to politics with what's
you
right
want to go
and
to
wrong.
Wherever, right.
Right,
okay.
Because if you talk about too many different things, people now get the idea that actually at the end things are confusing. If you get that idea, I agree with you. And you say, oh, that's what you mean? I mean that. So that's the point. Right now, I throw you, let's say, into a place where you see nothing, only darkness, and you get lost. So right now I'm saying within that context, the difference with God 3.0 program is I throw at you a compass to resolve that problem relatively, so that you would still be guided in your life for sure. That's the difference. Otherwise, before we just show it. See that? Life is not easy.
But it's
you
a
can
compass
go in all directions.
But,
here is the tool for you to guide yourself in that big mess.
But that compass doesn't have absolute truth in it. There's nothing absolute in that compass, right? Because that's what I'm saying. It's synergetic, and things are changing.
Correct. That's why just bear with me now.
Actually, your term universal volatility, I think, might make sense because that gets into thermodynamics and the evolution. There's the laws of physics. And everything moves toward entropy, is moving toward chaos, and moving through. And the whole process of consciousness may be a process moving across entropy and bringing increased conscious pattern of understanding to the universe, or to the consciousness at a universal or cosmic level. There may be a purpose in the universe to the whole biological process. But human consciousness is just part of a larger consciousness and evolution in this universe.
That part, I agree with you already. Okay. Except that with your way of doing it, for most modern, let's say, intellectual people, right? The mass is lost, and even the intellectual himself is lost too.
I don't think.
I am sure. I tell you that.
Okay, but go on.
That's how it come to my compass.
Yeah. Okay. Now to your compass. Okay, let's go to your compass.
My compass.
Yeah. Okay.
In that big mess. Of life is reliability, productivity, and respectability. Beside that, you are free again. Well, in absolute relativity. So bear with me to understand those terms first.
Okay, go on. Spell it out,
Before you would even say no to it.
I didn't say no ever to anything.
So let me say what it means by reliability. Reliability means that there's no truth in this life, absolutely, anyway. But if you say something, you keep your promise. You do it. For example, if I say that I would come in here today at 4:30,
you came right on the dot. You came right on the dot. I noticed.
That's it. That's still. But then that is reliability.
Yes.
Without that, we can do nothing, especially between human beings.
Well, a deal's a deal, but there's a lot of finagling goes on between the deal and
I don't know if I'm right
of the deal.
To come on time, but I say I would come, I come.
There's also room for spontaneity.
Right.
There should be room for spontaneity.
That's called reliability.
Okay.
And that's the basis of the law too, because otherwise you would be accused of fraud. And of course, you go like, I am late a little, that's not big fraud. But assuming you say that, here is $10 that they pay you, but actually you steal $1,000 or $1 million from the guy. That's big fraud.
You're getting into ethics and things.
Nice crime.
Right. Okay,
so that is reliability. That's the basis of the law also.
Okay.
And it's relative now, because you can interpret how to be reliable. Let's say to be reliable up to a certain point.
Okay.
For example, why? I say I'd come at 4:30. But assuming I broke my leg, or let's say my daughter broke her leg, what would I do? I take her to hospital, or I would come in here and let her die? Of course not.
Right? You don't have a cell phone.
So I do violate my promise to you.
But because of circumstance.
Right. So it's still relative there. But then I still had to do the best I can to come in here. That's what I said. You agree with me?
So
that's called relativity, or reliability.
Reliability.
That is one thing, that is one basic, let's say, rule on that. And you can also explain and find out the basis, the foundation of that right in the Ten Commandments. That part is okay, right there. So to see connection with God 1.0, God 2.0. So now, the second one, productivity. That means you have to work hard, or not too hard, but at least to do things that is productive, positive for yourself and others. That's my suggestion this time.
Well,
that's why it's still relative. So only those guys who are lazy and who want to do wrong thing would disagree with me.
You think being lazy is wrong?
Now it's relative. Now you want to argue with that? That's fine. But you understand my idea.
I'm lazy.
That is okay. But that's how there's still in absolute relativity. That means it's still relatively. So lazy may be a productive way to do. Like you say, some guy, maybe not you, say, oh, if people are not sick anymore, how would the economy function?
That relates to the work ethic and things like that have, Buddhist ethic and everything that avoids parasitism by people who lay around and don't help produce the goods of civilization.
I know, we distinguish ourselves quite well with those who from Buddhist guy. Yeah, those guys are lazy.
Buddhist ethic and Puritan ethic are pretty similar in lots of
They
ways.
are no good. No, they are not.
No, I don't.
You
don't think they're not good?
No, I don't think they are insisting on productivity. No way.
Puritan ethic did. You invest and you save.
Not the Buddhists in general.
Okay.
All they would do the least possible.
Okay.
Not even doing at all. The idea is not even thinking. What do you want?
Yeah, you're right. There is something to what you say in that. Yeah.
So,
but I mean, to the degree that it affected secular, philosophy. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead. Yes.
So the second or means respectability or respect for people's life, property, and freedom. So?
Golden rule.
Yes. So you go, it's still according to relativity, because sometimes I would not mind that someone may have to kill the bad guy. What can you do? Assuming you see a guy who is killing 10 babies in front of your eyes, what do? You say, oh, no, I cannot kill. I would say that's all right to blow the head of that guy up, if that's what he's doing in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
To stop him. Mm-hmm. If that's the only way, relatively.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, yeah.
That is what I would say. Some other guy may still debate about it.
Yeah.
Like if you talk about Buddhism, they may debate about it.
Or the Jains, they don't walk on the ground because you're going to destroy a piece of bacteria or something.
Definitely.
They're very, very definitely trotting lightly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or you may argue whether you should kill bacteria. You should kill
what?
Should kill bacteria.
Bacteria, yeah.
Or should kill virus, because that's killing too.
Bacteria was here for 9/10 of the time that there was life on Earth. There was only
and you
bacteria.
shouldn't kill them, or you should kill them.
Yeah,
you
right. We all walk in a sea of bacteria, and it's all interconnected.
But then you understand the idea that you should still respect life, and it's still relative. What's life after?
Well, life is
property.
a process that then gets back to, I would suggest it gets back to thermodynamics and gradients in universe and evolutionary process. It's amazing, isn't it, that there's anything on this planet like what is life? It's the only place we know of where life occurs in the universe.
No, I don't. On that, if you want to go far, now I'm going far, far beyond you. Life and death do not distinguish itself completely like you think.
Okay.
Actually,
I didn't mean life and death. I just thought it's amazing that life occurs in this
that's
third
what
planet.
I mean. But life is relative.
Relative. Okay,
yes.
go on now.
It's not. For example, when I look at you, actually, I look at the dead person. I do not look at the live person. Why?
Okay, because all the cells have died.
First, technically,
many times,
when the light of you reach me, it's already the past. They're a fraction of a second.
But there's something in between, the synergistic resonancy between systems.
You look at the star, right?
Yeah.
Blinking.
Yeah.
Actually, it looked at object that lasted like billions of years before.
Billions of years ago. Did you see that?
So you see the past up there.
Did you see that they've got a measure of taking the? Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's right. It's millions of years ago that it took to get here at 186,000 miles
and every
per second.
your skin is what? It's composed of dead cells.
Oh yeah. Do you know how many cells there are?
So you see everything you see.
I know, and it keeps rebuilding. It's amazing. It's a huge organ, the skin. Do you know how many cells there are in an average human organism at any time? Not the life cycle.
I think a few trillions.
How
cells.
many?
A few trillions.
You know how many? It's 100 trillion cells, and they're all overlaid with DNA, and every cell matters, and they all form a system. Amazing! I'm amazed that anything exists.
Up to a certain point.
Not to a certain
point. And here's the main idea in absolute relativity. No cells would be really indispensable. They are, let's say, they are interchangeable.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Because your cells in your body
are going to change.
After a while, it's gone.
How long
For example,
is it?
I say I'm Vietnamese like you insist, right?
Yeah.
But every cells I am born is gone a long time before.
Oh, yeah,
I don't come with any cells that come from Vietnam.
It does, yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Scientifically.
It would have been,
So what does that, let's say, it's left with me from Vietnam, tell me.
Yeah, no.
Tell me yourself now.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, to me, it's amazing that anything exists. I mean, and that, because you've got this cosmos. And did you see that they have this CERN thing going on now? And they've got shock waves of the Big Bang in this universe, they got of the shock wave only 200,000 years after its occurrence, 13.7 billion years ago. They've been able to take the measure of the universe with extended consciousness technology, been able to do that. That's an incredible feat in this universe. And with the CERN collider, they're going to be able to take a photograph of the shock wave within a nanosecond of the occurrence, if it's true, of the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago. That's a hell of an ability to take the measure of the universe and the situation in which we live by a conscious being, which is unique to humanity on this third planet, and we have no evidence of any other such thing in all the universe or universes that exist. It's really amazing when you ever stop and think about it, don't you think? And does that biological process have a purpose in terms of the larger expansion or the larger structure of universal mind, is what I was asking.
I like very much what you said. That's why I'm trying to tell you. Within that context, do you really know who you are?
Well, I know. If anybody who thinks they really know who they are don't know what they're talking about.
You can talk about my philosophy. I would tell you exactly who you are by telling you who I am in real.
Okay.
So you went already a long way to see how my hardware come from. And you see it vanish in front of your eyes right there. Is that not amazing? We agree that you want to dig that I was born Vietnamese. And now we agree that every item I was born with, that was Vietnamese gone. And you don't know what's left with me is Vietnamese.
Yeah, well, I hadn't thought of it that way. I haven't thought of it that way.
Right not?
Yeah.
So now, you better to identify who I really am is if I sell myself.
You might what?
Is I discover myself.
Okay.
And I would make you also be aware of yourself in a better way and in a more realistic manner. And if it's not so, just tell me.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You have few minutes for that? Or
I got a few minutes. I'm not sure how many minutes we have left, to tell you the truth. Let's just talk it out.
Okay.
Because the clock stopped.
Let me tell you who I am.
The clock stopped unexplainably, so we don't know exactly how much time we got left. So run the credits at the end and give us a cue, because I don't know.
You ask the guy, he would tell you. Just ask him from the phone.
I think we probably got about 20 minutes left, or 20 minutes
left, so plenty. Here.
I think so. That's my guess.
All right. I don't think it's 20 minutes left. But
what is your guess?
My guess is maybe 15 minutes.
Mark it in the audience and see who of us was right. I say about 20 minutes left. You say about how many?
About like 10 or 12.
10 or 12. If it comes out 10 or 11, I'm going to be very embarrassed.
At what time did we start?
I don't know what time we started. I'm not sure what time we started. What are you reaching for, a watch or a time?
Yeah, just a watch. See. You had a watch. What time is it?
I'm not sure the time set.
Not even that? All right.
Anyway, on.
Let me tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Where's my camera? This is the
this
one?
Is your camera. Okay. Talk right into that camera and tell them
right
the
now,
truth. Yeah.
I have a very big discovery to see who I am, and by that time you can say who you are too.
Okay.
And just give the result first, and I would make the demonstration with your help.
Sure,
that make it very clear and very simple, no nonsense.
Okay, good.
I say I'm God 3.0.
Okay.
And then you would say first, what's the difference with God 3.0 and God period, for example?
Okay, I say, what's the difference between God 3.0 and God period?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I just asked you the question.
Right. The difference is there's no difference.
Oh, okay. The difference is there is no difference. Okay. Yeah.
And then still, God appear in three different aspects for comparison purpose. The God that I call now God 1.0 was the God of Moses, described in the Old Testament.
Yes.
For the purpose of comparison.
Yeah. Is there comparable in the East to God, Moses, and the Old Testament?
No, not at all.
Mithra.
No.
In Iran.
It's quite different.
Yeah. Okay.
For Buddhists, for Taoists, it's not the God that all of the Old Testament.
But that's part of the overall pattern.
Not the same God. That's another higher God. That would include everybody. You watch one of my shows.
Interesting. Yes. Okay,
so,
go on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the God 2.0 is Jesus, second generation.
Yeah.
That's easy stuff.
Yeah, that's easy.
God the Father, God the Son. Second generation, God 2.0.
Old and New Testament, yeah.
And now, for 2,000 years, nobody think up a new aspect of God. Actually, God is only a software helping people to conduct their life.
Okay.
And they put, let's say, the Ten Commandments as a program for the Hebrews to behave themselves when they get out of Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that they are God 1.0 user for me.
Yeah.
That's the way it worked, and that's the first version. God
in a particular
1.0.
historical context. In a historical context, right.
So, so after 1,300 years later, Jesus come in. He fixed it a little. He say, yeah, Ten Commandments are not bad. However, you want to enforce it differently, make it more lenient in such a way that even if someone commit adultery, it's not too big a deal. You can forgive the person. So you don't enforce that law in an absolute manner anymore.
Yeah, that Old Testament was pretty grim.
Right. So Jesus is a relativist.
A liberal.
A liberal.
Yes.
They make it more lenient, but going by my logic.
Yes.
So he's relativized the absoluteness of the Ten Commandments. Before, when you violate it just a little, you get killed. So drastic in a way. It's the absolute idea, right?
Yeah,
it's still never absolute in real, but but you see the vision of it.
Yeah, I
but this guy say, yeah, the woman commit adultery, big deal. Who does not commit any sin in your life?
Who throws the first stone?
So
who throws the first stone who's not committed sin?
I did that, maybe worse than her. Okay, so all of them are gone. So he's the one who used relativity to relativize the sin. So he can forgive them. So he is one of the relativists. So now, 2,000 years after Jesus, they find out that the lesson of the Ten Commandments combined with love and forgiveness by Jesus is, let's say, good enough, perfect again. But then one person come up with a new software telling people how to behave themselves, and that's called the new software called God 3.0 software.
When did that come into being?
When that come into being?
With Turing or?
With God 3.0 software?
Yeah, that'd be Turing or the computer or the technology.
No. At the time when
Einstein.
I made it, and I'm not even too sure. I'm not even too sure exact dates I make it. It's a long process.
Yeah,
it's about like at least about 15 years back.
Oh, 15 years back. Okay.
That's the program I wrote.
I see.
Now that is based on what I call RP and AR. And you can see that if we have more time, I can prove it to you that the program is better than just the word of love and forgiveness.
Okay.
That include in there. Because most of the people would say that, how can you teach something that doesn't include love, for example? Because love and forgiveness sound very good, right?
Yeah, they
Everybody want to have that. But I say, actually, love and forgiveness are included in RP and AR. Why? I would say that. If you say that you love me, but assuming you lie to me, I don't want that love, right? Assuming you say you love me, but when I'm hungry, you don't give me food because you don't work, you don't provide for me.
Yeah, in Hollywood, where the actors, they're acting.
It's no good.
No, but in Hollywood, when they're acting and so forth, they're not saying what they really. They say when you learn to fake sincerity, you've got it made. So that's not really real.
Right. So that part, it's not love, right?
Right.
So if you say that you love me, but behind my back, let's say you steal from me, you do everything wrong.
Or do something wrong to somebody else.
Like we go by RP and AR.
Right,
that's exactly that.
AP,
so that's not love for me. But assuming you are mean and say, I don't love you, just like a tough father say that to a son.
Yeah,
just
tough love,
I don't love you. But at the end...
Unless you do something.
But at the end, you still take care of your son properly because according to RP and AR we talk about.
Yeah.
And I would love that person a lot more than the guy who say I love, because that's a hypocrite.
Yeah, it's
like
a
most of the
hypocrite.
priests who make that say they're preaching to the audience on every Sunday. They talk about love, but they don't mean a bit on it. Behind their back, you see something else.
Yeah, it's
So
not
that
authentic. Too often it's not in the the secular world as well, or in the business world.
So let's come back to my proof. First, you can identify yourself as God. Why? I can say that relatively, I am God. Take my example first, right?
Okay.
It may apply to you, but I'm God.
Maybe everybody's
From only
God.
that part is correct. That's what I'm trying to say. For only 5 point of view. Beyond that, I'm not.
5 points
of view. Yeah.
5 points of view.
Yeah. That I'm God.
Okay, it's a
because relative.
5-dimensional
right.
concept. Yeah.
The first one is physically.
Yeah.
By matter, by the body.
Mm-hmm.
Whether my body is that of God or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I say yes, I am.
Mm.
Second, visually, by my appearance, how I look. Yes, I say the answer is yes, and I have proof for that.
Yeah, okay.
The third one is awareness. That's in say, are you aware that you are God? That's one way to see it.
Okay. Mm.
And then the fourth one is spiritually. That means do we have the spirit of God?
Mm-hmm.
I say yes to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the fifth one, that one really special to only DMT. And you know who is DMT?
That's you.
Okay.
That's
so
Dr.
right now,
Truong.
so which one you want me to show you first? The 4 evidence.
Might as well go to the 5th.
The 5th?
Might as well. That's sort
that's
of a
the one I
summation
brought
of
for
everything.
you right now?
Yeah.
I think we should go it for the last.
For the last.
They want answer to see.
The trouble is we're in a situation where we don't know exactly how much time's left because the clock
then we can do it next
the clock
time.
stopped working. So what are we going to do with it when the clocks don't work right and the clocks don't give you the right time? You have to wing it. You have to figure it out. What are these things you wanted me to make available to the people and hold up? This stuff. You showed me this, and I got it. You're a very interesting fellow. Very interesting fellow. I'm glad you're going to become a producer here, perhaps. Yeah? That's great. I think it'd be good. This. What is this about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the documentary
Now,
evidence.
here is the documentation, right? Can you bring it?
But I don't want to show the evidence to support something that people had no knowledge of right away.
Oh, you want to make the word now? Could you want
As
to
a lawyer, had to get foundation
Yes,
or something.
and you get your evidence.
Then it's evidence of something.
Now, can we try to put this in? We don't know how many
Yes.
time is left. Now, could you set it up so that we could show these documents and so forth and the relevance of it?
Like this?
Like in a setup.
Yeah,
You're going to tell the people what these things are
once it
before
comes
we
to
show
it,
them.
I can show it.
Should I show this now? The camera can come in on it now. Would that be?
I think if you show it now, it means nothing.
Okay.
The evidence have only certain purpose to show what evidence. For example, you want. All right, everybody understand. So let me go over one thing to show you that how come that materially I'm God.
Okay, we won't do this now.
Not yet.
Okay.
But don't you
If we
agree
get
that
to it.
it's a very good question to ask?
It was the question again was what?
That how come that physically I claim I'm God?
Okay, how come physically you claim you are God?
Right?
Yeah, that's something really worth considering,
That is something concrete. That is something like not fooling around.
No,
you don't run
very,
around.
very
Because
serious.
I'll say, like if you ask Benedict XVI, you know who is Benedict XVI?
Yeah, right.
Okay? Do you believe in God? Yes. Right? He would say. And then where is God? I don't know. Oh, God is in your heart. God is there. Okay. Now, you had to show if God exists, had to exist physically for your eyes. If you could, right?
Yeah.
So, how come that I can prove that my body is that of God? Very easily, by asking a simple question.
Okay.
Do you agree with a lot of people that God is everywhere, right?
Yeah, it would seem, yeah. Yeah,
It
to me.
seems,
Yeah,
right?
it seems
Okay.
that he's
So
everything.
now, am I not somewhere?
You're here.
Of course.
Yeah.
So,
That's
God
somewhere.
is right here. That's God
Here
right
is part of
That's
somewhere,
it.
yeah.
So God is right here.
Uh-huh.
Can
Yeah.
you tell me that God is not here now?
But that would be the same with me, too, then.
That's back-
That would also
actually,
be the same with Willie. That would be the same with
exactly
George.
what I tried
my
to say.
dog, would it be the
That's
same with my
exactly
dog?
what I tried
would my
to
dog
say.
be
That's
included?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
But that doesn't make of me no less God now.
Uh-huh, right. Okay.
For example, I say I'm drinking water,
Yeah.
right? You say, but you too, you're drinking water. But would that make me drinking milk now? No, right? I'm
Yeah.
still drinking water,
Right.
even though you're
I
drinking
must
water
say
too.
you have impeccable logic. Yes, that's true.
Right?
Because everything is part
That's
of
how I'm
everything.
just saying that it's good for me, but good for you too. I don't deny that. I even suggest that idea to you
or
right away.
necessarily part of a whole system, yeah.
Now,
it's like
you-
systems thinking.
Right, so you agree with that, Bob?
Yes.
So now we go to the visual thing, appearance. Don't you hear that the Bible say that God created man in his image? So God
So
looked
then
like
you gotta
man,
be God.
man looked like God.
No.
And on the other hand, if assuming you say, oh, the guy, that means me, doesn't look anything like God, then I ask you a question. Did you see God before to say he's different? What's your answer?
I hate
Say
to
no.
tell Doctor, I hate to tell you, no point in talking because the tape is run out. We're in black.